Good evening, everyone. What an exceptional 2 hours of diverse conversation inspiring us to choose the status quo. Gender equality is an issue and has huge ramifications on productivity, GDP growth, and inequality. A study by McKinsey Group Institute projects that in a scenario which in the economy identically to women, $28 trillion, which is a whopping 26%, would be added to the annual GDP by 2025. We are indeed at a point where we cannot move forward without gender equity. But no conversation about an inclusive world is complete without addressing both the sexes. While female voices seek amplification, the male voice and gaze also continue to evolve towards a more gender equal world. This evolution is rooted in honestly questioning one's own biases and belief towards exploring what inclusion really means to each of us. So today we are talking to writer and mythologist Devdutt Pattanaik on nurturing the mindset of an ally by being a collaborator over a competitor. Devdutt Pattanaik writes on relevance of mythology in modern times. Trained in medicine, he worked for 15 years in healthcare and pharma industry before he plunged full-time into his passion. Author of 50 books, 1,000 columns, several bestsellers, he's known for his TED Talks, his TV shows, especially Devlok, and his innovative views on culture, leadership, and Indian approach to management. Welcome, Devdutt.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry, I'm in a remote location, so the connectivity is a bit of a problem. But if it is, if there is an issue, then I will manage with my phone. But so these are the real issues that we have to face in COVID times. I think there's something about COVID that tells us a lot about how to see gender. I think the virus does not differentiate between men and women. The virus looks at both men and women exactly the same way. As far as the virus is concerned, a human being, and we are a good host for it to breed in. That's it. And I think this is how we remind ourselves how nature looks at us. And, I always begin my talks by talking about nature. Now, as far as nature is concerned, man is an animal, woman is an animal. All of us are essentially animals. And we have to live in this world to survive. And the best way to survive amongst human beings is through collaboration. That is what has made us successful as a species, not through competition. In fact, the reason human beings are so powerful amongst all the animal species is because of our ability to work with each other, talk to each other, connect with each other, help each other. And that is the big idea. One of the things that you learn from mythology is how stories are told, and it is through storytelling that you find different approaches to relationships. I'm often asked, what does mythology say about women? And I keep telling people that in mythology there are no men and women. Those men and women are basically symbols. They're using symbols to communicate ideas about how to live a human life. So when you talk about a Lakshmi or a Durga or a Saraswati, you're not talking about women, you're talking about concepts. Lakshmi is about wealth. Saraswati is about knowledge. Durga is about power. These are not gendered concepts. You are giving them female form in order to communicate an idea. And that is very important to tell our children, that when you read a Ramayana, it is not a story of a man who goes to the forest. It is the story of a human being who has to go to the forest and what he has to deal with. And it is important to, especially in the 21st century, to play down the gender narrative and to explain stories for the emotional component within them. And that is an important idea that I feel, especially when we are dealing with storytelling. In Mahabharata, there is a very famous story of a lady called Sulabha. Sulabha goes and meets King Janak. And when she meets King Janak, she talks to him Sorry, I'm just checking if my connectivity is right. So I'm in touch with the team just to make sure that you all can hear me. And I'm constantly pausing to just check that. That's all. Yeah. So Sulabha meets King Janak, and she, being a yogi, has the ability to connect using the mind. She's a yogi, and therefore she goes into the mind of Janaka. And Janaka says, please don't do this. Why are you entering my mind? And he keeps referring to her as a woman. As a woman, you have joined me and you have entered my mind. And finally, Sulabha loses her patience and she looks at him as, why do you keep referring to me as a woman? If I was a rishi, you would not refer to him as a man, you would just refer to him as a rishi. You are not looking at me as a person. And she then goes on to explain how the Atma has no gender. Our soul has no gender. There is nothing called a male Atma and a female Atma. When we talk about Atma in Vedanta, we use words like Jivatma, Paramatma. There is no gender given. It's called Nirguna. It has no gender. So Atma has no gender, and Atma wraps itself in different forms of flesh. It wraps itself in plant flesh, it wraps itself in animal flesh, it wraps itself in human flesh. Human flesh can be male and female. There are different kinds of animals which have different kinds of gender. A single plant can have male flowers and female flowers, which means all the plants that we see are androgynous. You know, some animals, you will have the seahorse, which can get pregnant. So the male gets pregnant in the seahorse. So there are different kinds of animals in the world, and Atma enjoys taking all these forms. And therefore, this idea of gender is very restrictive. And that is our training. In India, we have, we are training ourselves more and more to look at the body rather than the person. While our scriptures constantly talk about the person and not the body, they will always say, Sharir ko dekho. Sorry, Atma ko dekho, Sharir ko na dekho. Sharir is merely a technology or something that we have in order to connect with the world. So we have eyes that can see, the nose that can smell, the mouth that can taste, the ears which can hear. And this is an important idea that we need to take to schools, to colleges, to explain that a person is first an Atma. And we are dealing with Atma. That Atma is wrapped in different flesh. He may be tall, they may be short, they may be dark, they may be fair, they may be from different countries, different age groups, they may have certain abilities, they may not have certain abilities, they may be of different genders, different sexualities. It doesn't matter. Primarily, they are an Atma. And I think that is the most important idea in Indian thought. You know, when we read mythology, we hear story about Adam and Eve, and then how Eve tempted Adam, and therefore Eve is put in an inferior position to Adam. Or when you read Greek mythology, you'll have stories of Pandora's box, of how Pandora carried a box, and because she was a woman, she was very curious, and therefore she opened the box, and all the negative things in the world came into the. All these stories are stories. First of all, they're stories told by men to justify their privileged positions. While if you read the Rig Veda, the story would always begin in the beginning, the first being, and they don't give the being a gender. They'll say that in the beginning, whoever was the first experienced loneliness and therefore created the second. Now, depending on which lore you read, when you read Vedic lore, they will say the first being was male and the second was female. When you read tantric stories, they will say the first was female and then came male. So you'll have in the Vedic stories, they'll talk about Prajapati creating Shatarupa. But when you read the tantric stories, they will talk about Adi Maya Shakti creating Trimurti. Now, which story is true? Both stories exist. Around the world, you'll have stories that will say that the earth is female and the sky is male. So this is in Vedas, for example, you have the idea that the earth is female. Prithvi is female and the sky is male. But when you go to ancient Egypt, they would give the opposite answer. They would say the sky is female and the earth is male. Which mythology is correct? So when somebody tells you one story, there is an opposite story also existing in society. Somebody tells you that, women are great cooks, women should cook and men are warriors. I've always heard the story of men being warriors and going into battle and women staying at home and cooking food. And that is what mythology tells you. And then I tell the story of King Nala, who was a great cook. In fact, India's oldest cookbook is attributed to King Nala, and he's supposed to be a very good cook. And all the dishes are attributed to the male. And then when you talk about war, you have to talk of Durga, and then suddenly you have stories of Meenakshi of Madurai, who is a queen and a warrior who goes into battle. And so you have stories of women who go into battle, and you have men who are in the kitchen. So there is, every stereotype is broken in mythology. In fact, my most famous story is this idea of Sati Savitri. People always talk about, wo to Sati Savitri hai, very simple. And I always tell, have you heard the story of Sati and have you heard the story of Savitri? Because Sati is a girl whose father wants her to marry a Deva. And she says, no, I will marry Mahadev. And the father says, you cannot marry her. So she leaves her father's house to marry Shiva. And then she wants Shiva to come and participate in her father's yajna. And Shiva says, no, 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 I'm not interested in going to your father's house. He doesn't respect me. She goes on her own. And then the father insults her husband and says, your husband is a useless fellow. वो भभूत लगा के घूमता है सब जगह पे. And she gets very angry, and she's very angry that the husband doesn't listen to her. Her father doesn't listen to her, and she gets very angry, and she गुस्से में आके वो कूद पड़ती है यज्ञ कुंड में. What is interesting is that here is a woman with her own willpower. She decides what she wants. She does not just obey her father. She doesn't obey her husband. She does what she feels is right. And she simply cannot understand why these two men will not talk to each other. Itna ego kya hai ki father-in-law will not talk to son-in-law and son-in-law will not talk to father-in-law. Now, this is not like an Ekta Kapoor serial, right? Where we are hearing about Saas and Bahu fighting. Here you're talking about father-in-law and daughter-in-law, son-in-law not getting along. And this is from Shiv Puran. But we are never told the story that way. Or look at Savitri's story. Savitri's story comes to us from Mahabharata. And Savitri is a princess, daughter of Ashwapati. She's very intelligent. She's very educated. So intelligent and so educated that men are afraid of approaching her and marrying her. So the father tells her, you travel around the country, और जो पसंद में आए उससे शादी कर. And she travels around the world and she meets this wonderful man called Satyavan. Only problem is he is very poor. He's a woodcutter. उसके पास कुछ नहीं है, जमीन जायदाद कुछ नहीं है. She says, no, but I love him, I will marry him. So father says, ठीक है, मैंने बोल दिया, तुम किससे भी शादी कर लो इसके साथ. But he doesn't want her to marry. So he says, अरे ज्योतिष बोल रहे हैं कि after 1 year he's going to die. And she says, ठीक है, मैं manage कर लूंगी, लेकिन मैं तो इनसे ही शादी करूंगी. I will manage death. So Sati and Savitri type अगर बोले तो इसका मतलब कुछ और ही हुआ ना शास्त्रों में. We depend on people's ignorance. Most people enjoy ignorance कि नहीं, तुमको नहीं पता होना चाहिए. This idea that we don't let people study, access. Let me tell you, I have heard, when I was reading mythology, when I talk about Ramayana, people will say, oh, वो तो patriarchal narrative है. We'll always talk about how Ram abandoned Sita, वो तो सुन के मैं थक गया हूँ. And it is very interesting how people tell the story, because when in the Ramayana, when Ram को घर से निकाला जाता है, तो हमेशा बोलेंगे कि राम को कैकेयी के साथ कोई बैर नहीं था. She had no problem. वो इतने महान आत्मा थे, he would forgive. But Sita is not given that ability. She has not got the ability that even if people treat her badly, she'll treat them nicely. Ram has the ability to treat people who treat him badly. He will be very graceful. But Sita should not be graceful. उसे रोना पड़ता है कि हाय मुझे सबने छोड़ दिया. People have been so unjust and unfair. When people are unjust to Ram, he does not get upset. But when people are unjust to Sita, we expect her to be, we expect her to be sad and broken. You must excuse me, my battery is going down. Just give me 1 minute. I'm sorry, I didn't notice this. My apologies for you. I'll just switch on the electricity. Just one.
Sure. This is absolutely interesting, and 2 minutes break, and we are waiting for more.
Just.
And in the meantime, while Devdutt is putting the power on, time for all of us to reflect on the very insightful conversation we've been having so far. And please keep putting in your questions.
So, this Ramayana story is very interesting because when I was doing a workshop on Ramayana for one of the television channels, I suddenly realized something that nobody had told me, that in the Ramayana, Sita makes 5 decisions. She takes 5 choices and she takes responsibility. And I do this game with people. I say, tell Ramayana is such a famous story. Tell me the 5 choices that Sita makes. And people are like, Swayamvar. I'm like, Swayamvar choice nahi hota hai, because jo bhi wo pratyancha chadhata hai, uske saath shaadi hone wali hai. So she has not made a choice there. Her first choice is that she chooses to go with Ram into the forest. Her second choice is she chooses to feed the man who comes to her house saying, I'm hungry, risking her own life and crossing the Lakshman Rekha, saying that nahi, usko bhooka hai, usko khana dena chahiye, knowing fully well that she's under risk. In organizations, you have all these risk parameters. Don't take risks. Somebody takes risks. That means she takes initiative. She steps out. She steps out of the Lakshman Rekha to feed a hungry man. Of course, he turns out to be a Rakshas, but that's a different conversation. The third time she takes a choice is when Hanuman reaches Lanka and tells her that, why don't you ride on my back? And she says, no, I will not. I want Ram to kill Ravan so that his reputation as a king is maintained. Later, Ram says, you don't come with me to Ayodhya because people will not accept you, because you have been, your reputation has been stained. And as PR is very important for kings. Public relations is very important for kings. And I will not be able to protect you because your reputation has been stained. Now, whether we agree with it or not, that is the way the story goes. Sita says, nahi, main aapke saath zarur aungi. And later, when Ram, she's exiled and Ram finally tells her, okay, theek hai, tum ghar wapas aa jao. She says, nahi, is bar main nahi aungi. So she makes 5 choices in the Ramayana, and each time she faces responsibility for it, responsibly. So she chooses to go to the forest. She chooses to feed Ravan. She chooses not to go with Hanuman. She chooses to return to Ayodhya with Ram. Remember, she's given a choice. She's told, don't come back to Ayodhya. She says, no, I will come back to Ayodhya. And later, after she has been humiliated, they tell her to come back. She says, ab main nahi aungi because you have insulted me. So 5 choices of Sita. Now, we don't tell the Ramayana to children this way. And therefore, they always see Sita as weak, Sati as weak, Savitri as weak. We find somehow pleasure in bloodthirsty Draupadi, क्योंकि वो उसको खून से अपना बाल धोना चाहती है. This anger and vengeful Draupadi becomes the heroine, rather than looking at smart people, wise people. There were foolish men and there were wise men. There were foolish women and there were wise women. All women are not wise. All men are not wise, because everybody behaves differently in different circumstances. Just because Surpanakha is a woman doesn't make her a nice person. She does not respect consent. When somebody says her no, she doesn't listen. There is Vedavati, also in the Ramayana, who values Ram's decision. She wants to marry Ram, and Ram says, no, I'm Ekam Patni Vrata, and she respects that. So you have the story of consent with women. You have stories of consent with men. You have stories of, in the Ramayana, in the Mahabharata, you have the same kind of stories. There are men who respect women. There are women who respect men. There are men who disrespect women. There are women who disrespect men. So this idea, we have to rise above gender when we are talking about people's character. And I think the most important point to remember is gender does not exist when we are talking of Atma. In organizations, I always tell people that you are hiring Atmas. Every Atma, and what do you Atma? You'll say Devdutt is such a high funda word. Look at a person who has hunger and fear. Every human being has hunger, he wants something. Every human being's fear, they are afraid of something. Don't look at people as men and women. We look at people, you can look at people as the skills they bring to the table. Look at the knowledge they bring to the table, the attitude they bring to the table, the experience they bring to the table. This is a different way of looking at people. What hunger do they bring to the table? What insecurities do they bring to the table? If you start looking at people through the lens of emotions, then it's a very different world. Suddenly a different world emerges in front of you. I think the only person whose gender matters, I think, is your spouse. Nobody else's gender actually matters. If a policeman stops you on the road, does their gender matter? If you want someone to clean your house, does their gender matter? Someone to cook in your house, does their gender matter? We are conditioned to look at the world through gender. And I think the world is moving in a way which is saying that, we should be more and more gender neutral and focus. And I always tell people, जब तक तुम relationship की बात नहीं कर रहे हो, तुम्हें gender से क्या लेना देना? How does it matter who is driving your car and when you reach the airport and somebody receives you at the airport? We are used to seeing that I need a driver to drop me to the hotel. If the driver is male, female, transgender, how does it make a difference? I am feeling depressed and I want someone to motivate me. I want someone who motivates me. Does it matter if the motivator is male, female, transgender, or any gender? Does it matter? Indian ho, Chinese ho, African ho, motivate kar diya na mujhe. I just want that. I want motivation. So Atma Nirgun hai, is the key idea which I want to bring to the table. Because otherwise we start competing on the most useless things in the world. Men have to be as strong as women. Women have to be better than men. This language just creates unnecessary tension in a stressful world. I think we should raise our children to be aware of their bodies, but don't let your bodies dominate you so much. Agar maths problem solve kar rahe ho, you can't blame your body if you can't solve a maths problem. If you have to give an exam, you have to give an exam. Your brain is being questioned. If you're going for a swimming lessons, you have to train your body. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. वो पानी के साथ आपको ही deal करना पड़ेगा. How to float, how to move your body. If you're going to the gym, men also have it difficult. I don't think men enjoy going to the gym. Women don't enjoy going to the gym. Men don't enjoy dieting. Women don't enjoy dieting. Men have dietary issues. Women have dietary issues. So I think somewhere along the line, we have to decide and when does gender really matter? And why do we use gender as a reason to discriminate between people? In a collaborative work system, in a work, we have to get things done. We have to identify problems. We have to solve problems. That is what makes us successful in our careers, in our jobs. I need people who collaborate with me. How does that person's gender or general appearance or ethnicity or race or sexuality matter? If their personality is obnoxious, now that's a different conversation. It has nothing to do with gender. There can be obnoxious men, there can be obnoxious women. I have to deal with the obnoxiousness, not with the gender. I think that is important. And that requires a kind of a serenity, because somewhere along the line, when we talk of men and women, it automatically becomes a competitive conversation. And I feel that is very 20th century. We are in the 21st century. We are in a different world. Everybody's going to use cell phones. Everybody's going to use remote. You and I are talking. We should be more interested in when will we get out and talk to each other in person rather than remotely. And I don't think it matters who developed the vaccine, a man or a woman, or even a goblin, for all you know. It doesn't matter. When I read Harry Potter, does it really matter if Dumbledore is a man or a woman? Does it matter if it really doesn't? But we decide we want to create stories where we want Gurujis with big dadi, or we are not able to handle the fact. In the mythologies, they will have stories where men become pregnant. There are stories where men become pregnant. Bhangashwana gets pregnant. And why are they telling these stories? Why does Vyas tell the story of Ila who gets pregnant? Why are they telling stories of women who become warriors or women who don't want to marry? There are so many stories of women like Shalindi who doesn't want to get married. And there is Kuni Garga's daughter who says that, I would rather focus on my spiritual development. I don't want to get married. But there are also women like Jatila who marry many women, marry many men, not one, but many, not just Draupadi. We know of Draupadi, but there is also Jatila, there is Marisha. There are many stories like that. The thing is, you find all kinds of permutations and combinations in mythology. What you are told normally is that which is trying to create a kind of a stereotype of how men should be, how women should be. That is how, unfortunately, we are being trained. And that's why when I look at textbooks and school books, how are we trained? What dress should a woman wear? What dress should a man wear? How they should talk? लड़कियां को ऐसे नहीं करना चाहिए, किसने कहा? लड़कों को ऐसे नहीं करना चाहिए, किसने कहा? The child will figure out what is most comfortable to the child. And of course, in an ecosystem where you have boys and girls will behave in a particular way, boys will behave in a particular way. All boys will not behave like all boys, and all girls will not behave like all girls. And therefore, to create an ecosystem where everybody is helping each other, I think we should remind ourselves that gender is something related to the body and not the soul. And when we look at the soul, we focus on what really matters. We focus on, as I said, people's skills, people's knowledge, people's attitude, people's hunger, people's insecurities. And once you start looking at people this way, your ability to engage with them will become very powerful. In the scriptures, they will talk about this all the time. They'll always talk about balancing yin and yang. You need different kinds of energies. If you have a very aggressive woman let's say a very aggressive woman, they'll always talk about if the man who is with her, if she's getting married to also an aggressive man, फिर दोनों alpha रहेंगे और हमेशा लड़ाई होगी घर में. You need a more softer man in that relationship. If you have a very aggressive man, then you need a softer woman. It is not that woman is soft. It is that वो जो personality को balance करने के लिए we need something. And we have to look at it from a non-gendered perspective. That is what makes relationships very powerful. If you have a highly ambitious woman, then if the man is equally ambitious, then what happens? It becomes a competitive relationship. What you need is in a relationship to build in a good relationship is someone who is not competing with you. जिसको संस्कृत में कहते हैं सहचर होना चाहिए, who supports you. So you support them and they support you. And this balance of support, of knowing who is leading and when you are not leading. Jise shaadi ke fere, some feras are done with a man leading and some feras are done with a woman leading. The reason is to show that both have to lead at some time in the life. So gender is not important. Kabhi tum aage, kabhi main aage. This is in the marriage and spousal situation. But it also applies in work situation. Who will lead? It is not, sometimes the CEO is leading, sometimes the COO is leading, sometimes the CTO is leading, sometimes the CPO is leading. Different leaders are leading at different times. And so the leader's gender really doesn't matter. And if you think the leader's gender matter, then you बहुत छोटी सोच है आपकी. And I think that is the next generation has to be taught to move outside. Listen to what Sulabha told Janaka 2000 years ago. The Atma has no gender. And we are dealing in a world with thousands of Atmas. 7.5 billion people, all Atmas. Each one of those Atmas is hungry, is looking for something in the world. Each one of those Atmas is frightened and looking for security. Each one of those Atmas has knowledge, skills, and attitude that will help us solve issues. Each one of those Atmas is looking for a friend. Each one of them wants an ally. And none of them wants to feel cornered, doesn't want to have a rival in their life, doesn't want to feel like they're being predated upon. And I think that is the journey ahead of us. I think days like this is a time when we have to ask ourselves a very fundamental question: why does gender matter so much? Itna kya hai? Unless you are having a relationship with that person, other people, as I said, your whether it's your secretary, your boss, none of their genders matter unless you can have a personal relationship with them. अगर आप उनके साथ intimate होना चाहते हो, romantic होना चाहते हो, वो नहीं है, तो फिर gender उससे लेना देना क्या है? You know, it's a very fundamental question that I keep asking, and I think you should ask yourself today, and think about the stories that I've told you, and remind ourselves that the gods really don't care for your gender. और जो यमराज होते हैं, उनका भी एक फीमेल काउंटर पार्ट है जिनको मृत्यु कहा जाता है. So it doesn't matter. Death has no gender. Death has no gender. It treats man equally, it treats woman equally. मरते समय हम सबको मरना है वैसे ही, और भूख लगते समय भी हमें वही अनुभव होता है. हमारे जेंडर से कोई, there is no male hunger and there is no female hunger, and there is no male insecurity and female insecurity. There is just insecurity. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Devdutt, as always. It's never surprising. Every time I use, there's so many takeaways. And you had me from right your first sentence when you said COVID hasn't treated any one of us differently, whether it was gender, caste, color, creed, nationality. So nature doesn't treat us differently. So why is it that we look at each other through these preset mindsets and prisms of gender, nationality, caste, color? I think it's important. And you had me there also where you said, let's look at the character. Let's identify problems, find solutions, and hire the right skills and work with the right people, irrespective of the gender. I think that's the only way we'll reach 26% GDP plus by 2025, as McKinsey report says. But what an exceptional keynote, Devdutt, just what we wanted at this conference. And it was brilliant. You said, why do we need a day to celebrate any gender or anybody? I think humanity itself is a celebration which we need to celebrate every day. And there are so many questions. I'm going to start with a question from Alan. He says, assuming our mindset accepted men as inferior to women, he has not said equal to women, how different would the world and life in general be for men?
Well, it would be very traumatic, because in the moment nobody likes being inferior. A world, see, in the early 19th century, we lived in a different ecosystem where we genuinely believed that gender makes a difference and that men are superior to women. But as science has changed and our outlook has changed and our understanding of the world has changed, this idea of needing to call someone inferior itself creates an oppressive society. Nobody wants to live, and I don't think we should encourage the creation of an oppressive society. Even the person who is junior to you is not inferior to you. They are junior to you. They have lack of experience. Nobody is inferior to you. You know, even when you have to, if you go to jail and you see criminals, they are not inferior to you. Circumstances have resulted in them being put in jail. It doesn't make them lesser than you. And unfortunately, in our society, we celebrate looking at people as superior, as inferior, because it's a function of our ego. Because insecure people have a desperate need to create superior and inferior structures. If you are not an insecure person, you will never say, I am inferior or I am superior. This language is an indicator of your insecurity, and that is a bigger problem than who is superior and who is inferior. We have this Guruji culture where we bow before Gurujis and bow before leaders. It is a very foolish thing, because I have worked with the best leaders in the world, and each one is insecure in their own way in their private lives. Nobody is better than you or worse, superior to you. You may bow to them out of respect, but they should bow back out of respect to you. नमस्ते हमें सब कुछ करना है. ऐसा कोई आदमी नहीं होता है जिसको कहेंगे कि हम नमस्ते नहीं करेंगे, कि हर आदमी के अंदर देवता होता है. So there is no, let's not go into this conversation of men being inferior or men being superior. I don't think that's a direction that enables spiritual development.
So well said. I completely agree that this entire inferiority, superiority complex comes from our own ego state. And I think that is something that we all need to tackle. But, Spriya asks a very wonderful question Devdutt, she says human beings across history have killed to conquer, whether it was great kings or even situations like Syria today. Where does this drive of conflict and conquering come from? Does mythology have any answer to bring a change? Because you also said that it is about collaboration and not competition. And somewhere war and conquering associates that to what we do in our daily lives.
See, violence is, when a tiger is hungry, it goes and catches the deer and eats it. So violence really because you are hungry and you want what the other person has. So you want to conquer a kingdom because they will not give you willingly what they possess. So let's say you are sitting on a gold mine and I want access to that gold mine and you will not give me that gold mine and I don't have the patience to negotiate with you. I come and kill you because I have the power to do so. And that is a natural human instinct. It is coming from our animal instincts. And it also reveals our inability to rise above our animal instincts. So our default programming is to behave like an animal. And our spiritual journey is to abandon that quality. But unfortunately, everybody in the world can't become human. It is a big struggle. So you do deal with people who are full of anger and hate and jealousy and negative energy. And that is because they're still trapped in their animal. They are not able to let go of the animal inside them. They want to be the alpha who crushes. They want to be the, I always tell people, why do we make the lion the symbol of power? Because it is the alpha predator. In the jungle, it is the alpha predator. And it reveals the mindset of people. All kings around the world have liked the lion. We will always say Singhasan, Singh ke upar baithna. Why? What is so special about the lion? It is not giving you any, it doesn't give you any food. It doesn't give you water. Why do you like the lion so much? You like the lion so much because it embodies power and domination. And that is what unfortunately people love to dominate because it feels good to dominate. And that is our default programming. It is not our evolutionary programming. So you have to decide in your life, do you want to go backwards or forwards? Those who want to go backwards will behave like animals. They'll be territorial, dominating. And those who want to get out of that mindset is the person who is a seeker, who is trying to evolve as a person. So that's a choice we have to do. But you won't change everyone.
You're right, and we can change ourselves, and let's fuel that humanity and curb that animal instinct to conquer. And I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. And when we fuel humanity, we see everybody as Atma, like what you said. Shulabh said to Janaka that Atma has no gender, nationality, creed, or territories. See them in their character. But once again, coming back to conversation, Devdutt, you said mythology uses stories as concept. It does not see the characters in those stories as gender, but somehow the way they are narrated, stories have always shown men to be in a more privileged positions. So Danish asks that in Abrahamic mythology, mostly again, main protagonists are men. From where did the idea comes from? Why always men? He asks the same question.
So, we really don't understand, but there are many hypotheses. In nature, the female of the species is always privileged and the male is not privileged. It is an important thing to remember. So, for example, amongst birds, all the male birds will try to woo the female, but the female will select the one she wants to mate with. She will not select all of them, she'll select the best. So it is a very famous thing that the male bird has to keep dancing and work very hard, like the beaver birds have to make their nest. And then the female will select whom she wants to mate with. So most men are declared redundant. Now in the animal kingdom, like the tigers or with lions or with walruses or with monkeys, the alpha male corners all the female, and therefore the rest of the troops, the rest of the animals don't get access to the women. So basically in nature, there's a large redundancy of men, and only the best and the smartest man gets the more food, gets more territory, gets more mates. So that is the way nature is designed. Now culture is designed to benefit the mediocre man. And mediocre men naturally will tell stories which will privilege them over women. Because they have, in nature, they have always been given the second position. So the story has, you start constructing story that gives you because you are mediocre, you tell stories that privilege you over others. And that is where, in one way, patriarchy has its origins. So patriarchy has origin in this sense of feeling inferior. Now you can't fight the alpha male, so you fight the female. Because you can't fight the alpha male and you can't compete with the alpha male, you make the female the enemy. And that's what has happened in most storytelling. So that is why you will always, this is one explanation for patriarchy, is that the inherent sense of mediocrity and the feeling that you will be overshadowed by the alpha male has led to these but then these are all speculations. There's no way to prove it or disprove it.
But because it works for me as a woman, I completely agree with you. And somewhere, the way you beautifully summed up nature, coming to the animal kingdom and the bird kingdom, how even the female beaver chooses, or even women in the past in mythology have chosen who they want to marry to. I kind of agree with you that men were the underprivileged one and women are the superior one somewhere. So the stories were told otherwise. But maybe we now need to hear more from you and more stories where women are put back into their position, not of superiority or inferiority, but of equality, because that's where we prosper. And coming to the next question, again, it's a very interesting question, an anonymous one, and it says, Devdutt, what's been your moment of epiphany from the mythological stories so far?
I think my moment of epiphany has been the variety and diversity of these stories. It is not that all stories privilege men. It is not that all stories privilege women. It is not that all men are good and all women are bad. There are good women, good men, bad men. And the slicing and dicing is not on gender, but on character. Unfortunately, we slice on the basis of things that are visible. What are visible? Gender is visible. Ethnicity is visible, race is visible. I can't see character, and therefore I don't use character as a measure. We don't divide the world into how greedy a person is. We don't have a greedy index. We have a wealth index. Forbes magazine cannot produce a list which talks about greedy people of the world. It talks about how rich people of the world, because I can measure wealth, but I don't understand this mindset behind that wealth. So my epiphany for me was the diversity of ideas that emerged in mythology on all topics, on every topic that exists, and how Western stories are different from Indian stories are different from Chinese stories, how Vedic stories are different from Puranic stories. So I think the differences reveal to me the mind of people. And I think that was an interesting, that this was like a map. I had got a map of the human mind.
How wonderful. I have the next question, Devdutt, from Shreya, and she says, do you think the HR policies favoring women somewhere become a hindrance in the minds of men, both employers as well as colleagues, to see women as allies?
We have to ask people, how do you create a society when for the last 200 years of industrializations, when you have privileged men, how do you remove that over stress? So you have to go the other way. You have to create, it's like जब दाल में नमक नहीं होता है तो नमक को प्रिविलेज करते हैं, बाकी मसालों को गुस्सा आएगा उस समय, बट करना पड़ता है ताकि स्वाद ठीक हो. So we are in a system where today we do not have many women in the workplace. And how do we create a workplace that allows all genders to work successfully? And therefore, you can, whether we like it or not, there are certain biological differences that need to be addressed, whether it is a woman's body's need or maternity leave, paternity leave. These things are real. We have assumed that men don't take care of children, right? The way the HR policies are designed, the assumption is that men don't take care of children, that fathers are not important in raising a family. Where are these concepts coming from? It's absurd, and as I said, 19th, 20th century concepts which exist. We don't have, how does a single father get HR benefits? Now, these concepts will only emerge when you start addressing these issues of gender, and therefore you have to make that little extra help to enable women to join the workforce. The fact is, at one time in the industrial revolution, they said give women lower wages because that will make greedy employers hire more women so that more women come into the workforce, and that will have a positive impact on society. And later we will regulate the salaries. But unfortunately, that has not happened. Right now, women are being, uh, sort of not getting the same wages for the same work. For the same, we don't value the work. We are looking at the gender more than at the work, which is very strange. Um, and it's not that simple because in the film industry, for example, who gets the bigger audience? Does the man get the bigger audience or the woman get the bigger audience? Female models are paid much more than male models. So, but male actors are paid more than female actors. So depending on the market, it changes. It's not a simple answer like that. It is a complex answer, but the conversation has to be there.
Yes, you're right. They got the women into the workforce by putting them lower, and that never came. Except if you were in BCW, we have a fair we have a fair level playing field for everyone. We look at the character here, and so we are one of the privileged ones working in a great organization. But we have another question, and this says, what, according to you, Devdutt, is the most imperative and urgent change required in the Indian society today to accept gender parity?
I think one of the things we need is we need to see more women driving. I think in India, because I notice when I go to airports, I see a lot of the small buggies in the inside airports being driven by women. And they're not from upper class or something like that. There are these women images of farming women. When we say farmer, we think of man. We don't think of women. It's very strange. Why do we think of when we think of soldiers? Why do we think of men? Why don't we think of women? When we think of police, why do we think of men, not of women? So I think that is an important thing to ask ourselves these questions. Are there fewer drivers, train drivers? When you go on a plane, you see so many of the lady pilots over there, and it becomes a norm. The little girls watching this are saying that, oh, girls are flying planes. It has a huge impact on the minds of people. Even the men watching are getting impacted, that their entire life is dependent on female pilots, and then slowly the bias starts to go away. And that is how I think we need more. When I go to hotels, I keep looking at how who is doing the heavy labor work. In China, when you go, luggage is picked up by women. Coolies are not only men. What we call coolies, the word coolie is not used in with porters. So even today, we see porters as mostly men. Why are porters only men? Why can't women be porters? Because it's just a job. It has to be picked from point A to point B. Truck drivers. Why are truck drivers only men? That means security is bad in the society. That is a different conversation. Now it will force you to look at the toilets. It will force you to look at motels and then dhabas on the road and security on the road. So I think a great change will happen when we have more drivers who are women.
What a simple answer to a world problem. And yes, you're absolutely right. Start asking ourselves, why are women less in this sector? And I think we'll find the answers, and let's work towards them. But another very good question from Sumit, and he says, what do you think is the biggest deterrent for men to become allies in this journey of gender parity?
I think when many men are not educated, they are seen as a different species. I think from childhood, we are taught to look at women as a different species. And that is the unfortunate thing. The sons are raised differently compared to daughters. In schools, we don't have boys and girls sitting together. I've never understood why boys and girls sit separately in a classroom. It has no logic. Tall people should sit behind and short people should sit in front. How does your gender matter? That is the thing. You want, when you're sitting on a desk, how does it? Of course, people will tease you, boyfriend, girlfriend. That is part of growing up, and then you gradually realize, don't be so stupid, and move on. And it's okay if you're a boyfriend and girlfriend today. Tomorrow you can have another boyfriend and another girlfriend. That's fine. And to be able to handle these kind of jokes, I think from childhood we have been trained to look at women as a different species. Women and mothers and the fathers bring their own prejudices into the lives of their children and tell children to look at other children through a gendered lens. It is the most useless lesson on earth. As I said, other than for romantic relationships other than for your spouse, that is the only place where gender actually matters. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. But why are we looking at gender in every space from childhood? It's a very foolish thing. And that is why men have been, see, whenever you're in a position of privilege, you don't really question the structures around you. It happens to everybody. So white people will never question, they don't ever realize that white people are privileged. Because we are brown, we know white people are privileged. Those who are black know the white people are privileged. In the same way, men are in a position of privilege, so therefore they don't realize that they are privileged. The moment you are in privilege, you are in the sunlight, you are in the spotlight, you don't realize that there is darkness beyond. So that वो थोड़ा इतना अगर अक्ल होता लोगों को तो बताना नहीं पड़ता था, but unfortunately people don't have. Even I keep seeing all these wise gurujis and all talking, all very gendered language is used. You have men giving comments on menstruation, men giving, celibate men who have never had sex in their life telling what is good sexual practice. All these foolish things that happen. That is where the problem starts, because we are looking at the world through a gendered lens. It is important to know when does the gender lens matter, and in most cases it doesn't. 90% of your life gender doesn't matter.
You said it right, Dev, that the lens that we always use, which is the gendered lens, does not matter in actually 95% of the cases. But that is the lens that has perhaps been fixed in our eyes, and it's important to take it out, even if that requires a surgery. I think that is needed, because otherwise we'll never evolve from where we are today. I know you have a hard stop at 5 o'clock, and there's still more questions pouring in.
We can take 3 more, maybe 2 more. We can take 2 more.
We can. So there's another one. The lady asks that, is feminism an anti-diversity sentiment, according to you?
See, the word feminism emerged in a particular circumstances, and really it is about gender equality. It is not about women's rights. That is an old sentence. Now nobody uses those words. Now we use gender rights, gender norms. So those are old language which is continuing. It's like Brahminism, these kind of words. वो भावार्थ को देखिए, शब्दार्थ को मत देखिए. The problem is because the fem is there in feminism. That is what bothers a lot of people, women's rights. And normally people think that men are now, हमारे ऊपर औरतें राज करेंगी. This kind of very silly language is used. What is happening in our society is that, again, gendered lens. We are not looking at violence as violence. We are not looking at disrespect as disrespect. We are giving gender. I personally feel gender is given too much privilege. If someone disrespects someone, disrespect has to be handled. Violence has to be handled. And oppression has to be handled. Adjectives create a lot of issues sometimes. They may help you in identifying the problem. It is important, but let's not get overly, adjectives are like sharir, atma nahi hota hai. So we should be very careful with these adjectives. Diversity is an important idea. It is a difficult idea that people are very difficult, because diversity means dealing with people who are different from you. That's all it is. Diversity is dealing with people who are different from you. And if you're a man, you have to deal with women. If you're women, you have to deal with men. If you're straight, you have to deal with gay people. If you're gay, you have to deal with straight people. If you're white, you have to deal with black people. If you're black, you have to deal with brown people. You have to deal. That is diversity. Diversity is dealing with people who are not like you and working with them in a collaborative ecosystem. One of the criteria there is gender, and that is taught in the word feminism. That's all it means. What has happened somewhere is that nobody likes to be told that you are an oppressor. What has happened in the 90s, this whole language of justice, social justice, they are very interested in blaming कि तुम्हारे वजह से दुनिया ऐसा हुआ है. That accusative lens nobody likes. And unfortunately, some feminists have decided to use the accusative lens because it makes them feel powerful. But it doesn't solve the problem. Accusations don't solve problems. Buddha had once made a sentence कि अगर तुम्हें कोई तीर मारता है, if somebody shoots you, what will you do? Will you go after the archer to punish him, or will you go in search of a doctor to heal your wound?
Wow.
So most of the जो activist होते हैं और politician होते हैं, वो हमेशा archer के तरफ जाते हैं. They keep blaming the archer, but those who want to solve problems in life will focus on the doctor. So I would rather go after the doctor and not waste time with the archer. किसने मारा तीर, किसने मारा तीर, वो नारेबाजी के लिए अच्छा है, वो वोट्स के लिए अच्छा है. That is good for politics and power. That doesn't solve the problem.
So very well said, Devdutt. I'll come along with you to the doctor because I also believe in the power of collaboration. And you said something very beautifully. Being an ally is believing that collaboration makes us powerful, and it's not about competition. But somewhere along the time when we are growing up, we are also taught this thing about competition, and that's what drives and fuels passion. So that's the question. So from one of the young mothers, and she says, how do you make young children distinguish between collaboration and competition, and
So
still have that passion?
the best way is compete with yourself and collaborate with others. Simple.
Wow.
So if you have got 98 out of 100 in maths, please compete with 98 and try to get 99. Don't look at your friend has got 99 and I want to compete with him, because by competing with him, you will destroy a relationship when you could have been a great friend. But if you compete with yourself, you will be a better person. So always compete with yourself and collaborate with people around you.
How wonderful. And I want to clap on that account, because that holds not only good for children, but it also holds good in businesses, for professionals, for each of us. And I think that's an ethos. If we start our life on that ethos, I think life will be good. We'll not require a Women's Day to celebrate women and talk about gender equality if we all start thinking like that. Thank you, Devdutt, for your insights. And do you have any closing comments to say for off?
I think there are, of course, many questions that can be. I think I have asked people to look at the Aranyaka, which I had put together. The reason being, that is a book which talks about gender from the point of view of the forest. That is how I began the story, because the forest teaches us so much about gender and how the forest, I think that's an important thing for basics for many people in the HR world and the corporate world and the business world. So take a look at that book, and maybe you'll expand your mind, and like Sulabha, look at the Atma and realize it has no gender.
Thank you once again. Thank you so much from all of us at USB Conversation, from our people who joined in. I'm certain that the takeaways from this enlightening conversation sure will spark a think for all of us, and mostly men, without whose active support, significant progress towards gender disparities is unlikely. Without doubt, we'll have many more men like you who will choose to challenge this gender unequal world by choosing to become allies. So thank you so very much, and thank you very much. A challenged world indeed is an alert world. When we choose to challenge myths, biases, patriarchal mindsets, we create more open spaces for dialogues and growth. So preserving status quo is no good. Be collaborators, accomplices, and co-conspirators who fight injustice and promote gender equality. As Devdutt said, it is not about competition, it's about collaboration, because we are better together.